of that?
No. Probably, I don't know, but
I love it.
I can't explain that.
The students are ready. I don't want to take anything away from them. So over to you, sir.
All right. Thank you once again. And good morning to all our cherished listeners, especially our level 300 students reading the course Trends in Education and School Management in Ghana. This morning, we are looking at a very important issue, which is motivation. And it's a key factor that drives behavior. And it influences performance and goal achievement in every educational setting. In fact, it's not related to educational settings alone, in all spheres of life. But for the purposes of our discussion, we will be relating the issue to educational settings. Whether we are students striving to learn or teachers working to inspire, motivation plays a key role in how we approach our goals and overcome challenges. So this morning, as earlier indicated, we will explore the meaning of motivation, discuss the types, and then also discuss the importance of motivation specifically in the setting of the educational institutions. Right. So the question is, what is motivation? It's derived from the word motive, which literally means inner state of our mind that activates and directs our mind. So motivation could be seen as one's willingness to exert efforts towards the accomplishments of one's goals. And so you would have had or established or set some goals you would want to achieve. And the issue of motivation comes in based on the willingness for you to put in that maximum efforts towards the attainment of these goals. So it is seen as an internal drive or an external stimulus that arouses, that directs, and that sustains the behavior of an individual with the aim of achieving some specific goals. So in the context of education or the school setting, motivation is what encourages students to learn and encourages teachers to teach effectively. So for us to achieve good learning outcomes and for us to achieve good teaching efforts and attainment of teaching goals, there is the need for us to consider what drives us to get these things done. So in essence, motivation is the why behind the actions of people. So somebody puts up a certain behavior or an attitude and you ask, why did the person do this? The answer to the why question will tell what really motivated the person to put up that kind of behavior. So motivation, we can say, explains what initiates, sustains, and regulates the behavior of people. So for example, a student may study very hard or very well for an exam because he or she wants to gain some knowledge. And this may be seen as something coming from within, more of intrinsic, which we will look at later. Or because that person would want to earn a scholarship. And so the scholarship becomes an external stimulus, which will direct the person to study very well to achieve that kind of goal, getting a scholarship. So what is teacher motivation then? Teacher motivation refers to the internal drive or the external influence that inspires and sustains teachers' interests, commitment, and enthusiasm towards the professional roles and responsibilities. And so we know that teachers have been trained to also imbibe in learners the good knowledge, the good experiences and skills to make the learners become responsible in the future for themselves and for the communities they find themselves in. And so every teacher will have to inspire the learners to learn, and the interest of the teacher in the inspiration of these learners is very key to the successes of the learners. And I think, and we all believe, that motivation will really help in ensuring that these roles to be played by the teachers are done very well, because they have either an internal drive which is pushing them to do it, or there is an external kind of factor which is also pushing them to do what they have to do. So the two key issues are very important, the internal and external factors. So if we talk of teacher motivation, we say that it determines how effectively teachers plan, deliver instruction, assess students' learning, collaborate with colleagues, and pursue professional development. Like I said, this has to do with almost everything that the teacher will do in helping learners attain the desired outcomes, and helping the school to also attain the desired outcomes, school outcomes or school goals. So motivated teachers are more likely to be energetic, creative, and dedicated to helping students succeed. Teacher motivation thus is shaped by factors such as personal values, passion for teaching, working conditions, recognition, leadership support, opportunities for growth, and relationships with students and colleagues. And it is based on this that Bennell 2004 said that teacher motivation is all the psychological processes that influence the behavior towards the achievement of educational goals. And Bennell stressed that there are two important aspects of motivation, and these are will do and can do. For him, the will do is the extent to which an individual has adopted the organization's goal and objectives. And so once you are aware of and understand the organization's goals and objectives, so in our case, the school's goals and objectives, then the teacher knows exactly what he or she has to do. The can-do motivation focuses on factors that influence the capacity of the individuals to realize organizational goals. And so motivation, we can say, plays a crucial role in shaping teaching and learning outcomes in our schools, because it is the driving force that encourages both teachers and students to engage actively, strive for excellence, and sustain their efforts in achieving academic and institutional goals. Looking at the meaning, we can deduce some key concepts from motivation. And one is needs and motives. A need is a condition of lack or deficit of something required by an individual or any organism, if we should put it that way. And so once you lack something, it becomes a need. The motives are the inner goal or desire that drives a person's behavior towards something. So what makes somebody behave in a particular way is determined by the motives. Then we have goals. Goals are things that we all try to achieve once we have set these as our targets. For instance, if you are hungry, then hunger becomes a need. But if you get the food to eat, then that becomes the goal. And the goal is to get the food to eat. So the hunger becomes the need, and the food that you would want to eat becomes the goal. And so our goals are not always extrinsic, but can also be achieved intrinsically. So it's not always that we have to get some outside force or stimulus to get us to do what we have to do or want to do. But sometimes coming from within is equally important. And for me, I think that the intrinsic motivation is very much important. Then we can talk about incentives, and this refers to the goal objects which satisfy the needs. And so we have a need, and then we have goals, we have motives, we have goals, then we talk about incentives. Incentives vary in quality and quantity, and this makes them less or more satisfying and attractive. It depends on the quality or the quantity of this incentive. And then we also talk about instincts, which is the innate biological force that predisposes the individual to act in a certain way. At one time, we may say that all behaviors were supposed to be results of certain instincts. And normally, we may be experiencing some of these things. Instincts, like we said, is more biological, and probably the psychologists will be in a better position to explain. But what it means is that sometimes your whole system tends to consider certain things that you might believe would be happening, and they do occur. And so these are instincts. Well, I can't say I've really gotten that explanation so clearly, but I believe you would have an idea, especially the experiences you've had with respect to instincts. Right. So now let's turn our attention to types of motivation. Generally, literature show that there are three main types of motivation. These are intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation that we have somehow talked about, and then the third is altruistic motivation. Now let's look at them one by one. 98.3 When we talk of intrinsic motivation, what do we mean? It is performing an activity for its inherent satisfaction rather than for separable consequences. Inherent satisfaction, innate satisfaction, rather than the separable consequences. So we are referring to situations where we engage in an activity for its own sake because it is interesting for us to engage in that activity, or it is enjoyable for us to engage in that activity, or it is personally rewarding for us to engage in that activity, rather than for some external reward or pressure. So when we talk of intrinsic motivation, we are looking at an individual's desire to perform a specific task because its results are in accordance with the belief systems that the person holds, or it fulfills a desire of that individual. Now, individuals who are intrinsically motivated act out of genuine interest or curiosity or a desire to improve themselves. So in the school setting, for instance, intrinsic motivation is especially important because it leads to deeper learning, greater creativity, and long-term engagement. Students and teachers who are intrinsically motivated often go beyond the minimum requirements, persist in the face of challenges, and derive personal satisfaction from what they do, and not because something will be gotten from what they do. So when we look at intrinsic motivation, we can say that it comes from within the individual. It's an internal drive to learn for self-satisfaction, which may include curiosity, enjoyment of learning, mastery of skills, among others. It is driven by interest, passion, or a sense of purpose. Intrinsic motivation sustains long-term engagement and satisfaction. It also promotes independent thinking and creativity, and it is not dependent on external rewards or recognition. So, what are some examples of intrinsic motivation that we can talk about? A student reading beyond the curriculum. Nobody tells you to do it, but you feel that reading beyond what you're expected to be doing will bring more knowledge, more experiences, and you understand concepts better. A teacher staying after school to support students who may need some remedial attention. We can equally talk about students practicing a musical instrument. Let's consider our friends from the music department, or even the theater arts department. You know, when they finish with their normal official lectures, you see them practicing. Sometimes in the afternoon when you are passing by the central campus, you see them practicing, some on their violins, some on their flutes and all that. It's because they believe that they will do that to gain more skills in handling the instruments they use. And so that's one example. Then a teacher trying to teach using some new teaching techniques that he or she might have read about and all that. And then a class or a group leader organizing peer study groups is also an example of intrinsic motivation. And then a student creating artwork during free time is equally an example of intrinsic motivation. Not that the person has been asked to do it, but the person feels that practicing it during free time will make him or her more, will make him develop the skill in doing those things. Right. Now, what factors influence intrinsic motivation? When one is to accomplish a new task, it becomes a challenge for the person to accomplish a new task. So that really influences the individual. It influences the individual in accomplishing a new task, and that is one factor that influences motivation. Control is another factor. Control here talks about having a choice of what you want to do. Then the third is cooperation. working with people and helping others to succeed. Recognition is another factor where we consider positive recognition for work done, and that can influence intrinsic motivation. Then happiness at work, where we work in a conducive environment where there is no fear to do what you have to do, where it is easy for you to contact supervisors and other members of staff to ensure that you get the work done. That is a factor of intrinsic motivation. And then trust is another factor where we talk about honesty, we talk about effectiveness, we talk about believing in ourselves and others to get things done. So that's for intrinsic motivation. Now let's turn attention to extrinsic motivation. This is the engagement in an activity to earn a reward or avoid a punishment, rather than for the inherent satisfaction of the activity itself. So here it is not about the innate desire to get things done to achieve a certain target, but here you are doing it because you are either going to gain something from it as a reward, or you are doing it because you want to avoid some untoward consequences in that situation. So extrinsic motivation comes from outside the individual, and it is based on external incentives such as grades, praise, prizes, recognition, or fear of some consequences. We have the desire to perform work or task which is controlled by external forces such as good working environment, benefit package, monetary or bonuses, high occupational status, rewards, and praise is part of the extrinsic motivation. So extrinsic motivation is driven by external rewards or avoidance of punishment. So in the school setting, extrinsic motivation plays a valuable role in encouraging students and teachers to complete tasks, meet deadlines, and comply with rules, especially when intrinsic motivation or intrinsic interest is lacking. Where people are not motivated intrinsically, that's where we see more of the extrinsic motivation coming in. However, over-reliance on extrinsic rewards may reduce long-term engagement if not balanced with intrinsic motivation. So it's not advisable to always rely on extrinsic motivation. There should be a way to balance the use of the two so that we can achieve the tasks that we want to achieve.
This is Radio Windy Bay.
Now,
Windy Bay, 98.3
what are
FM.
some examples of extrinsic motivation? Maybe these ones may go for teachers. We will look at that of students as well. So for teachers, examples of intrinsic motivation include improving performance for promotion. Of course, you know that when you work well, when you perform well, you'll be promoted. So you do that because you want that promotion. Then attending workshops to gain CPD points. These days in GS, the National Teaching Council ensures that teachers who attend workshops and in-service training gain some points for their professional development. And so the teachers will be attending because they want to gain the points. And this is where, if the intrinsic motivation is not really seen there, they only go because of the points they want to accrue, but not because they may want to learn something from the workshop or in-service training. Then preparing for preparing well for evaluation visits, where you know that a CISO would be visiting to observe your lesson and all that. Or you hear that NASIA is about coming for some monitoring, then you prepare well for such evaluation exercises. They become more of intrinsic motivation. And then seeking recognition from leadership through voluntary responsibilities. You want to be recognized as performing your duties very well. And so, especially in co-curricular activities, you organize such activities with students and other colleagues, and they form part of your visibility so that you'll be seen as doing what is right. Not that you've been told to do it, but in your own evolution, you come out to do that, but with the motive or with the motive of gaining some recognition in that sense. So for students, we can talk about working hard for good grades, participating in a competition to win a prize, following school rules to avoid punishment, completing assignments to get some good grades and praises, attending school to earn a scholarship, behaving well to earn a reward, and doing group work to avoid negative grades. These are some examples of extrinsic motivation that we can look at in relation to students. Now we move to the third type of motivation, which is altruistic motivation. Altruism refers to an ethical doctrine that claims that individuals are morally obliged to benefit others. It refers to the desire to act in ways that bring some benefits to others without expecting any personal gain or reward. It's a type of motivation where people show their feelings, behavior, and desire to help other people without wanting something in return. And so some writers see altruistic motivation as the love for and the desire to work with learners or individuals, and an inclination to serve society. So it's more of serving people, doing things that are going to bring some benefits to people without considering getting anything from what you do. And it is driven by a sense of selflessness. It is driven by a sense of empathy. And it is also driven by a sense of compassion or moral commitment to help others. So in the school, for instance, altruistic motivation leads individuals, both students and teachers, to engage in supportive and caring behaviors for the well-being of their peers, their learners, or the school community. In fact, unlike extrinsic motivation, which seeks rewards, or even intrinsic motivation, which is often personally fulfilling, altruistic motivation centers on the good of others. What is the nature of altruistic motivation? One, it is driven by empathy and concern for others, which I've earlier mentioned. It's rooted in moral values, compassion, or desire to serve. It is not dependent on external rewards or recognition. It promotes social harmony, teamwork, and collective success. And it often results in pro-social behavior and community building.
Windy Bay 98.3
So,
FM.
when a teacher provides extra help to struggling students, it's seen as an altruistic motivation, where students help their mates out without expecting anything in return. it's also an example of altruistic motivation. Situations where teachers donate to a needy student's uniform or supplies, that is also seen as altruistic motivation. Again, where we have experienced teachers mentoring new colleagues out of goodwill and professional solidarity, and not because they are assigned to do so, it is also seen as altruistic motivation. Again, school leaders supporting community projects, for instance, cleanup exercise and outreach programs on health issues, could be seen as an example of altruistic motivation. And then a situation where a teacher takes time to counsel a troubled student, that is also an example of altruistic motivation. Now, we have looked at 3 types of motivation: intrinsic, extrinsic, altruistic. What strategies will teachers adopt to achieve these? So for intrinsic motivation, teachers may use project-based learning to design tasks that allow students to explore real-world problems or personal interests through hands-on or creative projects. And these will foster a natural curiosity among the learners for them to desire the mastery of skills in these projects. For instance, you may ask a student to research and present on a topic of their choice related to the subject, such as how climate change affects my community, when we are looking at something in science. This will encourage ownership of learning and also encourage internal satisfaction among the learners. So that's an example of what can be done for the intrinsic motivation. For the extrinsic, we can implement a reward system by using tangible rewards such as points, stickers, certificates, or privileges to recognize and reinforce desired academic behaviors and performance. So we can create a classroom reward chart where students earn points for homework completion, class participation, or good behavior. And the accumulated points can be exchanged for small rewards or classroom privileges, for instance, extra break time or student of the week. And these are good extrinsic, good examples of extrinsic motivation. Then for altruistic motivation, we could promote peer tutoring or group help activities where we encourage students to assist their peers who are struggling academically, highlighting the value of helping others and contributing to the success of the group. And so we can organize peer study groups where stronger or academically good students are paired with those who need the support, and in that case deals with better academic attainment and achievement could help their colleagues with their knowledge and skills. We may emphasize that helping classmates is an important part of building a caring and a successful learning community. That is very important. It's not that they are just helping, but they're helping because it is part of the situation where we can have a community or a society where we see ourselves as capable of helping each other without necessarily getting anything from it. So that's another way we can look at altruistic motivation. So now the last part of the discussion is on the importance of motivation. One, we can say that motivation, especially in the school setting, enhances students' engagement and learning outcomes. This is because motivated students are more likely to be attentive, they are more likely to be curious, and they are more likely to be actively involved in classroom activities. They take ownership of their learning and demonstrate persistence in the face of academic challenges. So, a teacher who uses praise and recognition to reward efforts rather than just achievement can boost a student's self-confidence. For instance, a student who struggles with mathematics but is commended for attempting to solve a complex problem is more likely to continue improving. And I am a living testimony to this.
This is Radio Windy Bay,
Right.
98.3 FM.
Then we can say that it also improves teacher performance and job satisfaction. Motivated teachers are more committed, more enthusiastic, and more innovative in delivering instruction. Motivation then enhances their professional satisfaction and reduces burnout. For instance, a school that recognizes teachers' achievement through awards, professional development opportunities, or simple appreciation notes often sees increased teacher retention and improved classroom performance. And so it's important that we motivate teachers so that it will reduce the rate at which teachers leave the system. If they are well motivated, attrition rate will reduce, and that will keep more of these good teachers in the system. Motivation also promotes a positive school climate, and we have already discussed school climate, and I believe you still recollect or remember what we discussed on school climate. So if you say motivation promotes a positive school climate, then we want to say that a motivated school community contributes to a respectful, inclusive, and supportive environment. Motivation will foster collaboration, will reduce absenteeism, and will encourage mutual respect among staff and students. An example, if students are involved in goal setting or peer mentoring programs, they develop a sense of responsibility and belonging, which will improve the overall atmosphere of the school. Again, motivation drives school achievement and school improvement because it inspires stakeholders to work towards the school's mission and vision. It fuels innovation, accountability, and the desire to exceed academic and operational targets. A head teacher who motivates staff by involving them in decision making and improvement planning often sees better teamwork, more effective implementation of school policies,
Windy Bay,
as well as improved student
98.3
outcomes.
FM.
Then there is also motivation supporting lifelong learning and growth mindset. Individuals who are motivated, especially teachers, develop a passion for continuous learning. In schools, this encourages both students and teachers to seek new knowledge and skills, adapting to changing educational needs. Needs of education are changing almost all the time with the advent of technology and so many other things. And so a student who is motivated intrinsically, for instance in science, may join a science club or enter competitions outside the classroom to foster deeper learning and personal growth. And so the student or whoever is involved, either a teacher or a student, would be thinking about learning more about issues that confront them, or making sure that they are abreast with time. So that's another importance of motivation. Then it also reduces behavioral problems and dropout rates.
Windy Bay.
Motivation can reduce negative
98.3
behaviors such as truancy,
FM.
lateness, and disengagement. Students will be helped through motivation. Students are helped to see the relevance of education to their future goals. So schools that offer extracurricular activities aligned with students' interests, such as sports, arts, or technology clubs, tend to experience lower dropout rates and better discipline. So, to conclude, I would say that in the school setting, motivation is not just a psychological concept, but a practical necessity, because it energizes learning, enhances teaching, nurtures school culture, and underpins academic and institutional success. School leaders, educational leaders, stakeholders of education must therefore create structures and strategies that cultivate motivation across all the levels of the school system. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Sir KWEKU ESIA-DONKOH. That is the, remember,